Welcome again to It Doesn't Take a Genius, conversation with introspective perspectives and pithy points of view. Here are your hosts, my friends, Max and Marty.
I think that's Mark and Mike.
Yeah, whatever.
Ramsey!
Marshall, it just never fails. I'm sitting here with my typical backdrop, which is actual books on my bookshelf in my office, some, model cars in the background with it. And I never know where you're going to be. Today, you're in a library.
Oh, not just a library, the Hogwarts library.
I thought I saw a book flying past a minute ago, so that would... It makes sense.
Yes. Well, and I'm very proud that as a Muggle, you recognized what was happening. So that's very good. No, I think today's topic, you're finally, after 88 episodes, you finally have a background that fits our topic.
That's possibly true.
Nice. So I chose the library because today is all about learning and curiosity.
Yeah. And you and I got into this because of a story I told you, and I'll just quickly share that. I had a client years ago. I was supposed to go visit this client on behalf of a automotive manufacturer, and I was supposed to help them understand how to sell on the internet. That was what it was basically about. It was about 2 years there where we spent just trying to learn how to sell cars on the internet. And we literally had conversations like, all those emails in your inbox from your website, those are actually people. Like that was sort of the gist of the conversations we sometimes had in those early days. And I didn't appreciate sort of how big of a leap some of these car dealerships were taking until this one event where I was with a dealer, and he would fly in. He was an absentee dealer, as we like to say, and he would fly in from Florida to attend my quarterly meetings. And I just thought, I'm a pipsqueak. This guy is a rich car dealer. What is he getting out of this? Is this a big deal? And next thing you know, we're sitting there around his computer, and I show him that you can copy and paste by doing Control C, Control V. And he just sat there stunned for a minute. And then he literally gathered up everybody in the office. Boys, get over here. Boys, get over here. And we spent the next, 10 minutes or so learning about copy and paste. And I was telling you that story, and you were making the observation that, like, that's a good thing.
Yeah,
it sounds pitiful to a lot of people. I get it, but that is a good thing.
Oh yeah, and the part that I love about that story is that he was open to learning, and then he was enthusiastic enough about the learning to yell, to immediately want to share it with other people. Right? This is so cool. Get in here. I've learned this new thing, and I want you to all just to be just as excited about it as I am.
That's right. That's right.
And what we find in our line of work is sometimes not everyone's just as excited about learning as we are, or sometimes their leader, their manager, their boss is.
Right.
And so in our line of work, oftentimes we get hired by somebody who owns the business, runs a department, owns a store, that type of thing. And they bring us in, and the fact that they brought us in tells us they're already in a learning mindset. And then they say, I want you to work with all my managers. I want you to work with all my leaders. And so we'll host a general session. Hey, this is who we are and what we do. And then we'll go into some one-on-one sessions.
Right.
And it doesn't take very long to figure out that some people are extremely excited that you're there. They see themselves as growth opportunities. They know there's more to be learned. And then there's people we sit across from that see zero value in what we do. They're somewhere in their head, they're all that in a bag of chips, or they believe that this is what it is. It is what it is, and it's not going to get any better. It's not going to change.
Yeah. So a couple things about that. One is that, sometimes, not not often, but sometimes we get brought in by a guy who says, my people need to learn, I don't. So there are those times where I remember Linda Mitchell, one of our mentors, telling a story of, where she sort of had to look a car dealer in the eye and say, look, they're not going to accept this unless you're willing to work on this too. And it was like a watershed moment for the organization. He got on board, and a lot of good things happened as a result. So I do want to give that one caveat.
No, I had the exact same experience. I was doing a workshop for a manager just this year, and I was talking to him before it started. I said, very excited to have you here. He goes, I'm not all that happy. I said, what's the deal? He goes, I send people to workshops. I don't go to workshops. Yeah, not sure what I'm even doing here. It's like, oh, it's gonna be a tough day.
That's great. Well, here's the other thing I wanted to throw into the mix here, and this will get a little weird briefly and quickly, but I'll hawk this book. It's not something that I think anybody listening to this podcast is going to run out and buy. It's Norms and Nobility by David Hicks. And it's essentially a treatise he wrote on education and what were the benefits of a classical education. And what is classical education? He was a headmaster. And so he had a history with, I think he was Oxford trained and things like that, but just a really fascinating individual. I got a chance to be present for an interview that he had, and just a really, really interesting person. And it basically boils down to what he sees as the source of what education is about. So I'm gonna read you a quick bit from the beginning of the book. He's talking about classical education. He says it's not a specific time or place. It stands instead for a spirit of inquiry and a form of instruction. We're not going to talk about the form of instruction. That's a whole thing. But let's talk about the spirit of inquiry. This idea that there is a genuine curiosity on your part. And he says that the whole process that goes into that spirit of inquiry, he says it's the indispensable tool for unearthing all human knowledge. So it involves mental habits, it involves a mindset, and we're here today to sort of talk about that there are just some ways of orienting yourself that will make sure that you are continuing to grow. And one of those things is a spirit of inquiry, and having that be sort of how you orient yourself to your day, frankly, your life.
Oh yeah, no, I think that's spot on. I never thought of that phrasing, a spirit of inquiry. I use the word curious.
Yep.
Because I'm not British, so and just and people have asked me about it. Said, what makes you good at what you do? And I said, one of the foundations is I'm just insanely curious.
Yeah.
And beyond curious, I want to know how everything and everybody works.
Right.
I just need to know. I need to know how this machine works. I need to know how this process works. How do people get from here to here? And then how do you work, right? When you're presented with a problem or a situation or an opportunity, what goes on in your head?
Right.
And that insane curiosity is the thing that helps you, because you see so much that you can, and then once you connect the dots, you can help people by connecting the dots to things that work, that will augment what it is that they're wanting to do, how they want to get better, and things like that.
Yeah. And what's so cool about that is that does not mean that you're like this wild rebel out there, just sort of, a maverick taking on, learning anything and everything. You have to sort of submit to something to learn about it. So, with a client, with a new concept, with a new machine that you're trying to learn how it works, like you have to sort of sit under it for a while and be humble around it and learn from it how it works. what the parts of it are, what the process is, whatever it is we're talking about. And that's a place that a lot of leaders sort of lose touch with, right? They've climbed the ranks and they've arrived, and they've got it figured out. And so I don't need to, be in a state of humility anymore. I'm just gonna, get my people to do it. They go to the workshops. I've already been to the workshop. I've figured that out. It makes me think, this is a little silly, but it makes me think of Indigo Girls, the famous folk rock band from Georgia.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, I mean, clearly that's what it makes you think of too, I'm sure. And I'm and I'm gonna there's a line that I always thought was kind of cool, and the older I've got, I think the more I realize it's not that cool. I think it was their big breakthrough hit, Closer to Fine. They say, it's just all these things that they've experienced in life that are leading to them reaching self-fulfillment or whatever. I don't remember exactly what it's about, but they say, they talk about college, and they say, I spent 4 years prostrate to the higher power, got my papers, and I was free. Like finally, down with the man. I survived that period where I was being put into a box. And I certainly think that's true. I think it's quite possible that you go through an education where you're not really learning to have a spirit of inquiry. You're learning what to think, not how to think. And that's scary. So I get it from that point. But sometimes we need to be prostrate to something so that we understand it. And that might be your people. It might be learning about your people, what makes them tick. They don't tick the same way you do. I wonder what makes them tick. Things like that might be where you have to have some humility. Just, this goes back to our last episode. I don't know. That's a wonderful place to be. I don't know. I'm going to go find out.
Well, and we talked about this from a coaching standpoint, right? You need to get to know your people. You need to get to care. And so I run this exercise. I'll have a room full of managers. I'll pair them up, and I'll give them a set of questions to ask each other.
Yeah.
And so they'll ask each other, and they're good people. They want to know, and they have this wonderful conversations. What are your goals? What would the best day look like? What are your career goals, your personal goals? Just these questions, and they get done, and they have to, and I always have to stop them, right? They're just talking, right? I'm like, all right, come back. And so I get their attention, and what about that work? Well, it was great. I asked these questions. I learned so much, and then I hit them right between the eyeballs. All right. So then the question is, do you now know more about the person you were paired up with than you do about the people who report to you?
Yeah.
And you'll see, the heads lower,
Right.
There's a few, there's a new guy, I really haven't spent much time with him or her, and, things like that. So taking that curiosity and it's inside of them, right? Demonstrating the power of it, and then creating that emotion around that discomfort of, this is something I need to do. Is go be curious with my people. And one guy said, before the pandemic, I knew all my people's goals and what their plans were and stuff like that. He says, but since the pandemic, my goals and life ambitions have changed. I bet some of my people's have as well.
Oh,
I need to go back and be curious all over again.
Yeah.
To see what's changed, what hasn't changed, so that I can better interact with them.
No, that's really good that you would periodically need to just take stock and see what it is that you now don't know.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's good. That's really good.
Oh yeah. Well, and if you think about this, right, it's that demonstration of curiosity, like we talked about in the previous episode, where you're asking questions and things like that. So when I meet a new client, they always want to meet in their office. We sit down and they start telling me about this department and that department, everything. I say, can we go look at them? I'd love to see it. And I would, right? Yep. They're all set up different. They're all doing the same thing, but they're all set up different.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you have these great conversations about things that wouldn't have occurred just sitting in the office setting, trying to recall them from memory.
Yeah. my version of that is, how did you get into the business? Because for me, it's always the story. I almost am not interested in how things work the way you are, but I'm insanely interested in what their story is and what got them to this place that they're at now. And there will always be, just like we talked about in our previous episode, they're going to give you that brief timeline or, say, well, my dad got me into the business. Okay. In what way? Tell me, was your dad in the business? Whatever it's going to be, there will be some thread to pull there, some further question to ask. Gosh, there's just so many things to learn. It's just to stay in that mode as much as possible. It's going to make your working relationship just tons richer, let alone the fact that you'll have learned something. And that's always its own reward.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I firmly believe every person on the planet does something better than anybody else.
Yeah.
And it's part of my job is to figure out what that is.
Right.
And by being curious and staying present, you figure out what it is. And that's always exciting. And then you figure out, are they utilizing that superpower to its fullest?
I love that. Yeah.
And even people like we talked about earlier, right? They initially present as non-learners. I really don't, one of our goals is to create discomfort. Discomfort can be pain or attraction, right? A little bit of pain, right? What happens if you continue on this path and not learning and not growing and changing? What's going to happen? And what is the upside? What neat things could happen to you if you did take on a learning mindset and added some new skills to your toolbox? And sometimes we do that with assessments. We get some feedback from their peers, from their team members, just different questions. And then all of a sudden you figure out they're leaning in. And now they're starting to open their mind to, all right, maybe there are some things that I could be doing more, better, different, or less that would help me succeed both better at life and work.
Yeah. And you and I talked about this before we started recording. I said that my concern was that, people would hear this as us whining about clients that didn't get us. And, we didn't have a good working relationship, and, it was because they didn't have a learning mindset. But we certainly don't mean that because there are clients that you don't click with. The issue is that client in a mode to be a client? Are they in a place where they actually can grow? They may want to grow, but they won't unless they really deep down are willing to be humble, to learn, to apply some things that may or may not work at first.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah, just having the ability to admit, I don't know as much as I should about this topic.
Yeah.
And then start to explore whether it's us or some other resources. Right? There's we live in the golden age of learning, right? All these resources are available free of charge everywhere. And whether you avail yourselves of our expertise or these other learning resources or a combination thereof, the key is to just get out there and to try and get better at something.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Well, this is sort of a short one, but it was a natural piggyback on our previous episode about just asking one more question. And you can't do that unless you have the mindset that we talk about in this episode. So we hope that this has given you a new way to look at how you orient yourself to work and life, and gives you just one more reason to stay curious, be curious, and approach things with a spirit of inquiry.
Yes, spirit of inquiry. Oh, I like that. Yeah. and let us close with a quote from Albert Einstein.
Please.
Yes. We're on a first name basis. And he said, I have no special talent. I am only passionately curious. And so one of the greatest thinkers of the 20th century saw himself not as a great mind, but as somebody who was constantly trying to find the answers. And so, yeah, we could all probably use a little bit of Albert in all of this. Well, let's see what our wonderfully talented and not so curious announcer has to say about us at this point.
Not curious about us, that's for sure.
No. We still love you though, man.
And that, I guess, is that it doesn't take a genius. No rights reserved, nothing trademarked, copyrighted, or even original. Feel free to give it to anyone, anytime, using any and all media formats. Warning, Mark and Mike may or may not make another one. I'm your announcer, and I did not get paid a nickel to do this. They won't even let me tell you my name. So until next time, if there is a next time, stay safe. Be well.
That's good enough.